In today's video, we're going to talk about time signatures. Now, a time signature is what gives a song its beat. Our first example here is 4/4 time signature, and the 4 on the top represents the number of beats per measure. And this bottom 4 is the number of note values that we have per beat. So for example, if we take 4 quarter notes in 4/4 time per measure, then the 4 on the top and the 4 on the bottom both stand for different things. Now, if we take the 4 quarter notes example, the 4 on top means 4 beats per measure, and the 4 on the bottom is 1 quarter note per beat. So then we'll have a total of 4 quarter notes. Now, our next example here is 3/4 time. And just like the last example, the 3 on top means 3 beats per measure. So we're going to count 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And now this 4 on the bottom means the note value per beat. And again, since it's a 4, it's in quarter notes. So then there'd be 3 quarter notes per bar. Now this next time signature is 6/8. The 6 on top represents 6 beats per measure. And this bottom 8 is the note value per beat. So then this means it's in eighth notes. Okay, just let me write 6/8 in this box. Now for 6/8 time, we have 6/8 notes per measure. That's very important. So the 6/8 here in 6/8 notes per measure. Now this is our final example, and it's 2/2 time. This top 2 is 2 beats per measure, and the note value, which is represented by this one, the note value, is in half notes. On the staff here, I've drawn a C with a slash in it. This is called cut time, and it's also known as 2/2 time, so these two are interchangeable. And then on the bottom one here, this is just a C without the slash. It's called common time, and it's interchangeable with 4/4. So you might see either one of these in place, 4/4 or 2/2. And 2/2 is half of 4/4, so the feel is more 1/2, 1/2 versus 1/2, 3, 4. Okay, so this next one we're going to do rhythms. On the left here we have all our notes, and this is just going to be per measure in 4/4. This first one's a whole note, and there's 1 of these per measure. Now we have a half note, there's 2 of these per measure. Our next one is a quarter note, and yes, we have 4 of these per measure. And then right after that is the 8th note, and we have 8 of these per measure. Final is 16th note, and there's 16 of those. Okay, now on our right hand over here, we have our equivalent rests. And these are worth the same note value as the notes, and we'll go into more detail of those later. Okay, so now for an example, in this first measure we have the whole note, and as you can see it's worth 4 beats. And the next one here we have our quarter notes, and each note lines up with a beat, so 1, 2, 3, 4. Here's our half notes. We have 2 of these per measure, and they each get 2 beats. And then finally we have 8 eighth notes here, and you see the first one lines up on the main beat, so 1, 2, 3, 4, but these little ones in pink, the second eighth note, are on a half beat, and we'll talk more about those later as well. Okay, so here's a diagram of the rhythm breakdown. This first one here is the whole note, and it's worth 4 beats, as you can see in the little green inside the note here. And then if you break apart the whole note, you get this half note, which is worth 2 beats. And if you broke up the whole note, you'd get 2 half notes, so they add up to 4. And then if you broke up the half note, you'd get a quarter note, which each quarter note is worth 1 beat. And then going a step further to break apart the quarter note, you would get this 8th note over here. And they're each worth half a beat, which is half of what the quarter note was worth. And you can go all the way up, so there's 8 notes per whole note. And then finally, here's the 16th note. This is worth a quarter of a beat, and it's half of an 8th note. Okay, so now let's go on to counting rests. This first rest is a whole rest. Then we have the half rest, the quarter rest, the eighth rest, and the 16th rest. And just like the whole note and so on, this first one is worth 4 beats, the half rest is worth 2 beats, your quarter rest is worth 1 beat, the eighth rest is worth half of a beat, and the 16th rest is a quarter of a beat. And now here on the bottom we have how they appear on the staff, and it's just helpful to note, see the yellow highlighter, where these rests sit on the lines in case you need to draw them. So this first one here, we have the 16th rest, and then right beside it it's the 8th rest, and then the third is the quarter rest, then your half rest, and finally your whole rest. I've written some numbers here on the bottom in blue, and these numbers just represent the main beats in the measure, and as we've already learned, in 4/4 we count to 4. So in this first measure here, we have 4 quarter notes, and if we're going to clap it, it just sounds like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. Because each note lines up with the beat here. Now moving on to this next measure, we have some eighth notes, which makes the counting a little bit more tricky. But the easy thing to remember is that when you have eighth notes, you have 2 halves which make up one whole beat. So when you're counting it, it goes something like this. 1, 2, and 3, 4, and. And the important thing to remember here is on that second eighth note in each group, you need to say and because it represents half of a beat. Now another example is in the third bar here, and we'd count this one like 1 and 2, 3 and 4. Okay, so now in this final measure of the bar, we have a quarter rest, and when we're counting the quarter rest, we still count it, we just do not have a note or sound playing on this because it's a pause. So when we clap it, it sounds something like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so now moving on to this next line here, we have a little orange number, and this number represents notes that are held for more than one beat. So the note is just held through this second count, so it would sound something like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. And just remember, this is different than if we had a rest on beat 2, because you can't really hear it when you clap it, but when you play it on the piano or another instrument, you hold it so you hear the sound through that second beat. Okay, so now in this next measure we have 2 half notes, and just like the measure before, it's practically the same, and we'd clap it like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so now this is another measure with 2 quarter rests, and just remember the pink numbers from before, that we don't play any sound on the rests, and to clap it, it's like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. Moving on to this next measure, we have a whole note, and as we know, a whole note takes 4 beats. So just like the half notes, these whole note is just held over for the full measure. So when we clap it, it would just be like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. But you just have got to remember that when we're clapping, we can't fully hear the sound being carried over, but this sound would be carried over for the whole measure. Now in our final measure here, we have 2 rests. We have a quarter rest and we have a half note rest. And the counting for this one just sounds like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. One final thing before I end this video is I just want to give you a tip to remember the difference between a half rest and a whole rest. So this is the half rest right here, and the half rest, to me at least, looks like a little hat, like a top hat or something, just sitting on the grand staff. And since half and hat both start with an H, I just like to use this to quickly remember which is which.